Hello everyone, I'm Santiago and today I'm gonna be testing World War Z on the Steam Deck thanks to Saber Interactive for providing a code of the game. So I've been playing this since day one basically, and I was excited to check it out on Steam Deck because I tried the Switch version and it's not great. It drops below 30 very often and the visual fidelity is very pared back in comparison to the PC version obviously. So here you got Vulkan or DX11. By default it starts on DX11, but I'll tell you why I chose Vulkan in a moment. You got the resolution scale slider, which is not great. It's linear scaling, but using Vulkan you have dynamic resolution and FSR 2.2. So FSR 2.2, well, it's okay. Looks a little bit too blurry, at least in my opinion. If you hit apply, you also see that the image is stretched for some reason. I don't know why that happens with FSR, because the game is forced 16:9. Otherwise, again, it would be stretched. Animation quality on default, basically medium settings with high texture filtering and medium textures. The medium texture thing, you can only change it in the main menu, but I wanted to show you this first. So those are the settings. Let's go into full-on FPS counter. And as you can see here, when I'm looking through this glass, I'm dropping frames. This is normal because, well, there's a big transparency in the middle. Once we get away from this glass, we'll be fine. So my advice here will be to lock it either to 40 or 45 FPS if you have a Steam Deck OLED, or to the 50s if you don't mind some drops here and there. So what we sacrifice to get to this frame rate is the amount of lights that cast shadows, such as this one. As you can see, it doesn't cast shadows, and the resolution of the reflections, plus the at which distance the hordes of zombies are full frame rate, such as here, is not that noticeable, in my opinion. And for some reason, FSR sometimes just gives me worse performance. I'm not sure if it's a memory bandwidth thing. When there's a lot of zombies on screen, it still holds up pretty well. Again, it really depends on the environment. I'll show you another level that has issues. This one is pretty okay when it comes to performance. But as you can see, if you log it to 40, you should be fine. I'll now tell you Vulkan versus DX11. While DX11 on the GPU side seemed to perform better than Vulkan, there was more stutter when there's big hordes of zombies. Both modes, Vulkan and DX11, stutter with shader compilation at the beginning, which is a shame, although there's less shader stutters than at the beginning. So it seems that Valve did its job and precompiled lots of shaders for Steam Deck. So my advice when you launch the game is run the benchmark tool. It's in the options menu. Run it a couple times, it will compile lots of shaders, and it should be way smoother very quickly. And the thing with Vulkan is it uses more VRAM, but it seems to be using less CPU and a little bit more GPU. So that's why I chose Vulkan, because when there's a lot of enemies, it doesn't drop as hard as the X11. We seem to be, again, CPU limited on the X11, which is understandable considering the amount of zombies on screen. So I'll skip ahead a little bit and show you a part with more zombies. Alright guys, welcome back. Now there's lots of zombies. As you can see at this resolution, the fence disappears after a certain distance. Okay, explosion! So when there's more going on, you'll see those drops into the 40s, which I think is fine. I think it's better to keep it on medium than trying low or a low resolution. Again, FSR for some reason looks a little bit too blurry, plus the edges are like pixelated. Kinda weird. And at the same time, it tends to drop more frames for some reason. I'm not sure why that happens. Maybe it's a bug, maybe it's the VRAM usage on Vulkan being higher, or maybe a memory bandwidth thing with the game on the Steam Deck. So again, if you have the OLED Steam Deck, lock it to 45. If you have this Steam Deck, maybe lock it to 40. The Steam Deck OLED is probably going to be a little bit more consistent in that regard due to the extra memory bandwidth. So I'll show you now another level, because this one isn't that hard to run. So the level that I had the most performance issues with was called to Arms in episode 6. So we're here. So here, as you can see, we are looking into the distance. So as soon as I get closer, it starts stabilizing a little bit, but it's still not great. On the X11, it's a similar thing to this. Runs almost the same in this level. But on the X11, at least in this particular place, instead of dropping into the mid-30s, it drops into the low 40s. To fix that on Vulkan, lower textures to low, but considering it's mostly this level when looking into the distance, I don't think it's a huge deal. I mean, it's not like we're only playing this level. So I'll speed run ahead to show you what I'm talking about. So here, as you can see, it's mostly fine. So you just have some drops into the 30s every once in a while here. So here's the worst performing part of the game, at least in my experience. So the worst performing part is getting onto that bus and looking into the distance. So looking the way we came from, basically. If I look back, blah, it just dies. Yeah, this is the worst performing part. After that, it's mostly fine. So yeah, lock into 40. Let's swap into handheld mode now, shall we? Welcome back to the Steam Deck handheld mode. So this is the level that is hard to run, basically. I had to restart it because you cannot pause the game, unfortunately. So we're going to 40 FPS now. Again, 45 if you have a Steam Deck OLED. And if you have an LCD Steam Deck, I would say 40 is still fine. But 45 maybe it's a good place to start. Again, why do we drop here? The most demanding part. For no apparent reason. Again, this is the exception, not the rule. Freaking hate when levels are inconsistent like that. Anyway. But as you can see, with 45 is way more consistent. Instead of going into the 60s, then into the 30s, then into the 40s. And considering some people don't have the OLED Steam Deck, this is the LCD version. 40s will look good enough. I mean, it's a 5 FPS difference. And you'll be closer to the target in levels that are difficult to run, such as this one. So yeah, I would say 45 for the OLED Steam Deck people and 40 for the LCD Steam Deck people. Just because of the refresh rate. It's a perfect 50% refresh rate for the OLED Steam Deck. It looks a bit smoother than usual. But considering I'm not an OLED person here, we're going back to 40. We're closer to the target, and as you can see also, whoops, wrong button. What was I saying? Well, we're closer to the target. If we lock it to 40. That doesn't mean that on an OLED Steam that you cannot do that. It's just a slightly better experience. And at 40 it feels more consistent, at least to me. Right. Let me skip ahead once we get more zombies on screen. Okay, zombies are incoming. Here we go. A lot of them coming our way. Oh, not that way. Whoops. This way. Let's use the mortar. Let's see once they get closer. That's usually when it's difficult to render. There's also in this version Horde mode and Horde mode XL. There's more zombies on screen. That was added as a patch quite a few years after the game came out. And they've been updating it quite a bit. There was no FSR in the past. In this case, I don't think it's worth using on the Steam Deck at least, because you're not getting 60s. You get worse image quality and worse frame times for some reason. But the thing is, it's a 16:9 game, so you get black bars. At least for me, it's not an issue. And when you enable FSR for some reason, it uses the entire screen, but the image is stretched. So I'd say avoid FSR on this one, because you're going to drop into the 40s anyway. But it runs better than I anticipated, considering the amount of zombies on screen. And considering this is the level that ran the worst for me. Come on. More of them. Okay. Incoming! So yeah, so far so good. 40s is great. Again, after playing the Switch version, personally, I tried it on the Nintendo Switch. Because it came out on the Switch a few years after release. And it's basically below 720p, and it drops into the 20s when things like this show up on screen. But it's pretty impressive that they managed to get this running on the Switch. Probably took a while to optimize that. But the thing with that is that you get a way lower resolution, a way lower frame rate, and the quality of the game, the graphics, are not as good. Lower quality textures, lower quality zombies. So with that in mind, it's a big contrast jumping from the Switch to this. And if you like this game, I mean, there's no reason not to play it on Steam Deck. Just make sure that this level is not your favorite. I'll jump into one more just to show you as an example, and we'll finish the video. Welcome back. One of my favorite levels, the Japan thing. I really do love the details of the houses and all that. Pretty nice looking level. And as you can see, performs way better than the Marseille Rome level. Yeah, the Rome level, better said. Which is to be expected. That episode of the Rome levels ran pretty poorly, at least for me. This is nice to see. Also, forgot to mention, you can go first person if you want to. And there's an FOV slider for both third and first person. So you can actually go in here, and in camera you can lower or increase the FOV. I'll keep it at default at 1.0 because on a smaller screen I don't think it's that necessary, but it's a nice addition. You can swap between first and third person. The thing is, first person in this game is not great. There's no aim down sights and the animation is not amazing. I personally like this in third person. Just personal preference, of course, but it's good to have both. They did a great job with that in an update. So if you like first person, well, there you go. The thing is, again, no aiming down sights. It's just a classic thing there. Third person again. Let's get out the big guns. Save the bus. I'm working on it. Jesus Christ. Let me check something super quick. Okay, the shadows, as you can see from this bus, it actually casts shadows from the lights. With the medium settings, some lights do not cast shadows. So this is looking pretty nice. And well, just to finish up the video, the game runs good at 40. Again, you can run it at 50 or 60, but it's inconsistent because some levels just cannot hold it. Especially the ROM levels, those run horrible, at least for me. Whoops. And I forgot the controls. Then when it comes to Vulkan or the X11, by default you get the X11. You can change it to Vulkan and restart the game. The thing with the X11 is it uses less GPU and less video memory, but it uses more CPU. So when there's zombie hordes coming at you, on the X11, at least in my experience, it drops more frames. So there's a CPU bottleneck over there, which freaking sucks. So Vulkan, at least for me, has been a better experience as long as you keep it on medium. If you go anything above medium, the VRAM usage will be sky high and the game will drop more frames when there's lots of enemies. So I think Vulkan is the way to go. There's lower GPU performance, more VRAM usage, but it's way easier to maintain 40s when there's lots of enemies. Despite being more GPU heavy, but it uses less CPU, which you're good to go when there is lots of enemies, which is what this game is all about. So yeah, and there's also FSR if you want to use it, but I don't think it's worth using in this game. Personal preference, of course. We can definitely maintain 40s on native resolution. And if you have an OLED Steam Deck, maybe enable FSR and lock it to 45. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did revisiting this game. It's been a while. Thanks again to Saber Interactive for providing a code. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys. Thanks for watching.